Hi, all. Welcome to Actual Play. We are playing Coven tonight. This is the very first time it's going to have been on Actual Play. I believe it's also the very first time it's going to have been streamed anywhere. So you get to see us be all witchy. So let's all say who we are and where to find us, and what our pronouns are, and what our witchy thoughts are. April, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Hi, I'm April Kit Walsh, and you can find me on Twitter at Prilkit, Priltkit. My pronouns are she, her. And you asked about my witchy thoughts. I'm feeling pretty witchy about my tea that I'm brewing, my two cat familiars that are just off screen but are definitely going to visit us, and the full moon that we're enjoying tonight. Janaya?
Hello, I'm Jonea Kemper. My pronouns are she, her. You can find me on Twitter at Violet Riot Games. I'm thinking about my witchy thoughts, but all my thoughts are generally witchy. It's just in me. I'm definitely thinking about the full moon and hoping that the candles I've lit in the other room are safe and wonderful and aren't being interrupted by two naughty cats. Yeah, that's right. I also have cats.
As you should. Hi, I'm Sean Nittner. You can find me at Sean Nittner pretty much everywhere. I use he, him pronouns. I'm thinking about the full moon right now. I'm thinking about Kira's most recent awesome tattoo and how I'm stealing that for my character because she can change into various forms, including a serpent. And look at that rad serpent tattoo Kira just got. It's so freaking cool. So I'm excited about that. What I'm realizing is that my candles are not lit. So maybe during the break I will fix that, and we'll make that happen. How about you, Tim?
My name's Tim Early. My pronouns are he, him. You can find me at Oddbard on Twitter. It's a brand new Twitter account that's going along with Coven. Oddbard Games is going to be the name of our game company, right? Witchy thoughts. I'm just super excited to be running Coven for the first time live with this terrific assemblage of witches that have gathered here. I also have a black cat, but it will probably not emerge because it's very shy. Kira?
Hello. Hi, I'm Kira. My pronouns are she, they. And my witchy thoughts are also about the full moon, Janaya, tonight. I actually did a tower reading earlier today, and it told me what things I was supposed to keep and let go. And so that's a good thought when you're moving into the full moon, is to think about, don't make any big changes. Big changes are for the new moon, but full moon is like, what are you going to keep and what are you going to let go?
I like that. It's a nice thought. I wonder if by the end of the game we will have a lot of some things we want to keep and let go. So
possibly.
This game is a game, Tim, that you've been working on with your partner Jessica, right? And yes. So you sent us characters, so we all have them. So why don't I switch us over to the Roll20 screen, and maybe you can tell everybody, ourselves, and everybody watching how the game works, and then we'll play this thing.
Sure. Coven uses the Forged in the Dark engine, so the same dice mechanic and basic gameplay structure as Blades in the Dark, Scum and Villainy. It's a Folkara game, I'm calling it. It's set in an alternate history version of colonial America. The dominant cultural force are called the Sectarians. They're like a caricatured version of the Puritans. So a very austere, severe religion. And they're trying to establish cultural dominance on this place they've recently arrived, called Cape Urizen. They have some competitors for that dominance. There's a group called the Vitiates, which are sort of a venal caricature of the early modern Catholic Church in some ways. There's a group called the Friends, which is a far more moderate ecumenical religious groups that believe in equality between men and women. The sectarians have very sort of oppressive gender roles. So I was trying to set up a cultural, social, and political regime that would be very oppressive to the existence of witches, and so that the witches could inhabit those structures and fight against them, work against them. And the playtest that we've had so far, it's been a very talky game, right? A lot of social and political intrigue, pulling different levels of levers of power, and so that's sort of the focus more than it's not a high magic witchy game. It's sort of a low magic witchy game. And yeah, it just maps onto the Forged in the Dark engine really well. Some of the systems that Forged in the Dark has, like the consequences that just keep piling up and create kind of a pressure cooker, is interesting for these witches who are living double lives. By day, they just are normal villagers, right? By night is when they assume their witch powers and sort of their witch personas. And so that's an interesting split where you sort of have to juggle your daily life versus what you can accomplish at night to extend the goals of your coven and your coven's mother. And the whole time you're being surveilled by the powers that be in the villages. So that's the general concept for the game.
Sounds terrible, Tim. in a great, wonderful way.
Yeah.
Cool. So do you want to talk more about the setting, or should we talk about our characters, these cool witches that we're going to be playing?
Yeah, well, you guys are starting in a village called Earlham, which is in the middle of a miserable cranberry bog on the Cape. The folks founded it. It's a Friends town, so the Friends, the more moderate, friendly, altruistic religious faction, were having trouble living beside the sectarians, so they fled, started a new town. They went in the middle of this cranberry bog, so hoping that the sectarians would not follow them. But the sectarians did follow them. They were uncomfortable with them establishing their own sovereignty, and so there's a new sectarian minister has moved into town and brought some of his followers along, and there's starting to be a cultural clash between the Friends who just want to do their thing and the sectarians who want to make them do the sectarian thing, which is follow their rather oppressive religion. So that's the village, and you all live there as everyday villagers, and we can go around and hear about some of those characters.
Cool. Oh, Tim, who made this map?
This map is by Derek Ruiz from Elven Tower. Cool. He does a lot of map making. He does commissions for folks. He puts up content all the time. He has a Patreon account. So Elven Tower.
Cool. And is the Cranberry Bog that we're in, is it near any of the towns that are marked on the map?
It is. It's Earlham.
Earlham. There we go.
Yeah, is the town. It's right sort of in the center of the Cape.
There it is. Yeah.
There. Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, look at those they look like little hay bales. I like them.
Yeah, they're cute.
Kind of rustic, a little provincial.
Yeah, little cinnamon rolls.
Why don't we introduce our characters in the reverse order? So Kira, how about you okay kicking us off?
Yes, I am.
Cool.
Where is my character? I'm playing Maisie Gillum. She is her witch name is Virga. I thought that said that she was a Virgo for a second. Sorry. She is a maiden. Which is one of the 4 village identity choices. Like you can be a housewife, a maiden, a widow, or a servant. So I'm playing a maiden. My skill is animal husbandry, and my vice is dance. So I'm picturing straight up dance room from The Wicker Man, 100%. She is 17 years old, and her parents, Martin and Pleasance Gillum, are looking for a suitable suitor for her. They're concerned about how quiet Maisie has grown and how she spends most of her time in the woods on training the family goat Gurgis.
Troubling sign.
Say that again?
Troubling sign.
A troubling sign. Yeah. Well, I mean, is the goat black is all I need to know.
Probably.
Cool.
I'd take that as a yes.
The playbook is the Green Witch. So, I guess the Green Witch has an excellent familiar. So they're like very much into animals and stuff like that. I'm guessing. I don't know if they could be into plants too.
Both. All nature.
All of nature. Okay, cool. Cool. Let's see. Has one of my familiar skills already been chosen, or should I choose one now?
You start with an owl.
Okay.
And so the familiars, you get access to them at night during, like, in Blades in the Dark, there's the score. In Coven, it's the subversion, right?
Cool. Okay.
And so then your familiar becomes active, and you can send it on little errands, and we just sort of discuss what seems reasonable for that familiar to do. There's some sort of skills that you can get for them later where they actually get dots and an action rating, and you can sort of level up your familiar a little bit, but they start out as just sort of pals who can run small errands for you.
Are each of these the skills that I would gain later, or do I start with all of these?
What's that, Kira?
Do I start with each one of these skills at the beginning, or are these the skills that my familiar would level up to?
Oh, that you have a choice, right? For your excellent familiar ability, you have a choice of those 5 things that you can sort of pick. That's what you want. That's the ability you want the familiar to have for the subversion.
Gotcha. So every night I can choose one of those.
Yeah, they can be different.
Cool.
Yeah.
They're very cool things, like capacity for human speech, invisibility, sharp talons, and rebirth. Super awesome.
Frick cool.
So that's what my owl can do. My owl probably has a name that I haven't thought of yet, and is a horned owl or a barn. I don't know what a cool owl. I'll find a cool owl. And then I have like a bunch of stuff. Oh, my strongest skill is survey. Survey and finesse are my 2 strongest skills. I can also tinker, study, and invoke. And that is enough about Maisie.
Nice. All right. I think I am up next. I'm playing Sienna Stonefield. Her witch name is Miet. Sienna is, she works as a maid and cook in the home of William and Millie Fox. William raises and sells horses, and his wealth makes him a prominent sectarian voice in Earlham. He is overbearing, ruling his home with an iron fist. His home and his stables. Millie, his long-suffering wife, extends occasional kindness to the servants. So I'm imagining that Sienna has often had to encounter William's anger and dealt with that in various ways. Sienna's vice is hallucination. So I am imagining that there's lots of sort of herbal substances that she takes to forget about her day, or to commune with nature, or to see the truth of things, or maybe all of those. And she is adorned with 4 different tattoos, maybe more than 4, but definitely 4. And they're all sort of interlocking and connected. So there's no way to tell when one starts and the other one ends. But she has the tattoo of a goat, a wolf, a raven, and a serpent. As mentioned, I'm absolutely enamored with Kira's tattoo of serpent tattoo. Just imagine that one, and it just keeps going, and the other ones are sort of connected to it. And I am imagining that William does not take well to his servants having tattoos, and so she keeps them covered often, but I'm sure there are times when they've been revealed, and how scandalous that must have been. She is a shift witch. She can take the form of creatures, and those 4 creatures are the ones that she can take the form of. And I imagine her getting in trouble a lot. I imagine her not being a very good servant in the eyes of her master, and often having to do extra work, or being deprived of things, missing a meal or something like that because of displeasing him. Yeah, that's me. How about you, Janaea? Tell me.
Well, I have Sarah Bennett. Sarah Bennett's her witch name is Magda, which I really like. And she's a love witch. Love witches kind of can control the emotions and kind of like manipulate people that way. I think that's kind of fun, especially for this particular setting. She's a housewife who is a midwife. So she definitely is very involved in the village. She knows whose baby is due when, what, where, who, how, and why. She is married to Roger Bennett, who is the assistant to the secretary and minister, Proper Greaves. I find that this is probably pretty awkward because his wife's a big old witch. Roger keeps, I know.
Yeah, I have a question. Does she also know
Yes.
whose babies are whose?
Probably.
Right? I'm just thinking she would probably know, like, sure, that's your husband's child. Yeah, definitely.
Whatever you say. Roger keeps pressuring Sarah to get pregnant. And she's like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. But in general, she is practicing contraceptive herbalism without him knowing. And I'm sure that she is doling it out to other people as well.
Abortifacient is a very cool word.
Yes, an abortifacient, which includes things like pennyroyal and too much vitamin C. Things that are handy to know. Her vice is fetish, and I keep trying to come up with like a good subversive kind of sexual vice to give her, but I can't figure this out along the way. She has a bunch of really cool stuff, I should mention, because they're kind of neat, like binding claws and small shears, of course. That sounds totally normal. But she also has things like a fancy dress. So fancy dress and cloak, I kind of like that you can put it on and then all of a sudden people are like, that's attractive, extra attractive. I don't know how the assistant minister's wife has one, but like I like the idea that she just kind of stands out to the side. Makes me super happy. She also has a black cat, but that's under items. That doesn't seem to be. Is that a familiar, Tim?
That's your familiar. Yeah.
Sweet. I'm gonna name it Sabrina. Because why not? Yes. I was thinking of a super witchy name for it. But Sabrina, I feel, is like poetic justice. Let's see. Oh, I really like the idea of her having her witch's mark being a scar in the shape of a cowrie shell. Cowrie shells are really awesome and super traditional to kind of the vague time period we're doing, used for money and luck and wealth and love, and quite an unusual little birthmark to have, but really useful if you live on the sea. Let's see, April.
Yeah, so I am playing Bertha Hollis, aka Orchid the Blood Witch. Bertha is a widow several times over. Doesn't even put an upper bound on how many, but I'm going to go with 3 because that's a good witchy number. I think after her third husband died mysteriously of blood trauma accident, I feel like that was the conclusion of a ritual and men don't hit on her anymore. And this is like a huge quality of life improvement for Bertha. And she's, I think, the elder of the Coven. And so since we're the protagonists and the heroes and we believe in liberation, I think we can all just agree that the husbands deserved to be murdered, and draw a veil over why. I think she like put up with men because she wanted kids, and she doesn't have any surviving kids. And let's put a veil over the details of that too. Um, so she is a blood witch. Her vice is blood. And like, hey, if you have ideas about what that means, I'm open to it. But going off of the one word, I think that means that the way she blows off steam is she finds someone who deserves to be murdered and takes care of them. And that's just her like way of detoxing from the day. She is a very good cook. I don't think that she cooks people. I think that she runs like a community garden, and it's always very well fertilized. Part of her contribution to the liberation of folk and alleviation of poverty is trying to feed people who need it with her suspiciously well fertilized garden.
I love that.
Her primary skills are skirmishing and wrecking, which is a good time. She is fearless. So I'm envisioning a like fairly spindly, aging woman, but among her possessions are a terrifying mask and a flask of blood, trophies of her victims, which they deserved it and to be made into trophies, and they probably have some magical significance. She also has a bristly hound named Prowler. One of the items that I might have in my loadout is dog treats. And
Yes.
So I think that's my basic conception of Bertha. I think Reginald Hollis was her most recent husband, and she lives in like a creepy manor on the bog with a fenced garden area.
Yes.
I believe so. Am I the last one? Sean, do you have? You're the one who introduced me, so let me pass it back to you.
Yes, no, you're the last one. I introduced Cinna, and so yeah, we've all talked about our characters. I really want my bristly hound. I don't know where he is, what he's doing. Maybe he'll come strolling by and join as one of our familiars. Cool. So yeah, I think that's all our characters. Because you're three-headed. Tim, how does play begin?
Every session starts with what I call village play. It sort of maps to free play in Blades in the Dark, but it's a little more structured. Every witch just plays out a scene from her domestic life. The witch can choose that scene, the parameters of that scene. If someone's having trouble coming up with a scene, then I might suggest a scene. Lots of times it's good to sort of pull from, the familiar relations on your character sheet. You also have a friend and an enemy on your character sheet from the town. So it could be something related to one of those folks. And we just go around, play a short little scene. I play all the NPCs in that scene, of course. And that sort of helps to develop, just sort of background, setting, narrative, potential adventure hooks. The other thing I want to say before we start is these guys are playing a liberation coven. There's several different types of covens in the game. There's blood, there's eros, there's death, there's lore, there's a tinker's coven. But a liberation coven is sort of particularly interested in setting political and social paradigms and stability. They sort of thrive on chaos, upsetting the social order, trying to create more freedoms, intellectual freedoms, legal freedoms, sexual freedoms. They're very pro freedom, right? And the covens come with like upgrades that you get, and the upgrades that you guys have starting off, you have a safe house, so you have a little place where your coven can meet. I think putting that in Bertha's basement might be a good thing to do, because she lives by herself, and nefarious things might have happened in that basement. That ritual of the 3 dead husbands may have had something to do with that basement. So you have a place to go where you can meet together as a coven. You're a liberation coven, but you also have libertine as one of your special sort of upgrades. And this means like when you indulge vice, you can never overindulge vice, right? So that's a game mechanic that can come back to bite you a little bit at the end of a session. Here, cannot overindulge vice. You get extra stress going to the next subversion if you overindulge. So it's actually a good thing to overindulge.
Too much blood.
Yeah.
I'm so about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a couple of
Yes.
things you start with. And then every coven has a mother. During normal character creation, like everybody can get together and sort of create the witch goddess they want, that you sort of worship, that gives you guidance. They can intervene on your behalf if things get too scary. You guys' witch mother is Maeve, Medbh, and in this fiction, she just sort of, her goals align with the goals of a liberation coven. And so you just sort of have her as a tutelary spirit who can help guide you. But there's mechanics for the ways that the mother can interplay. Sometimes they'll want you to accomplish a specific subversion. They'll get angry with you if you don't. Sometimes they're pleased with you. Sometimes they're not. They're very capricious. We might not do those rolling effects just because we have, kind of a 2.5 hour gameplay, limited time. And I want to sort of keep on the core parts of the system. But the mother is something that comes in and is an important part of the game at times. So you always want to try to please your mother, right? And I wanted like the deal to be with the witch goddess instead of the traditional deal with Satan as just another patriarchal alternative to, the Old Testament God, right? So yeah. And so we start in village play. Anybody can volunteer to take the first scene, and we can sort of come up with what that scene is together. If you have some ideas, we can brainstorm. So who wants the first scene?
Can we have a scene? Go ahead.
No, you go, April.
I was just going to ask if we could have a scene that involves two of us and establishing our dynamics a little bit, or if
that would be absolutely fine.
Like intro, yeah.
Yeah, if you guys want to have a scene with two witches, which you guys are talking, and the village scenes are always during the day. They're always your daytime identities. And during the daytime, you don't have access to your familiars. You don't have access to any of the special abilities in your playbook, right? So you're kind of vulnerable. If you do invocation, which replaces a tune in Blades in the Dark, it's anytime you try to cast any sort of spell, and they tend to be like cantrips, low level magic, that can create stress. It can create exposure. So village play, they're usually just sort of dramatic scenes where you're talking, but there can be mechanical effects if the scene gets too crazy and starts to draw attention from other folks in the village, right? So yeah, April.
I was thinking we might, if you're excited about it, we could do an establishing scene to figure out some of Maisie and Bertha's dynamic, maybe in the garden, possibly with, let's have some non-witches around so that it's a fraught conversation. But
yeah,
sounds good.
Let's do it.
All right. And I think it's like perpetually autumn or winter was the atmospherics. So yeah. Probably got squash, we're harvesting the winter squash, and got Prowler the Hound lazing about, just watching.
So do we have our can we have our familiars with us like during the day, or do they not stick around at all, or do they just not have powers during the day?
They just don't have any special powers during the day. You can have the familiar with you.
Okay, cool.
She's a good dog. She likes to chew on gourds.
Cool. My owl, which I suck at names and haven't thought of a name for yet, is on top of the nearest roof because she's a barn owl. And yes. So yeah, what is I can't remember your character's name, April.
Bertha.
Bertha.
Yeah.
Cool.
Maisie, how long do you think we've got till the freeze?
I don't know, like 2 weeks. And she's like, Maisie is wearing like a very dirty dress, and her hair is very unkempt and tangled. And she is like digging on the other side of the garden from you, like maybe a corner, like not paying attention to the vegetables at all, like trying to like root out like a mouse nest. Is that accurate? I don't know, 2 weeks?
Sure, yeah, it's it is now. Right, so Bertha has her like gray with still some streaks of black hair, all done up tight, and hands, just dirty hands, getting her fingers in there, and just like work garments, and is just chopping off the gourds, testing them. There are other folks around, so it's like, yeah, you take as many as you can carry, take them home, share with your siblings, and just doing the sort of matriarch of the garden thing. I feel like we should maybe get a chance to talk if we're going to establish the dynamic.
Yeah. So Maisie suddenly turns around to Bertha and looks very concerned and says, oh, should we be picking like important vegetables to use later? I didn't really think about what we could conserve over the winter. not for food. I mean, you understand what I mean, the important ones.
Well, you have always been a good judge of these things. Why don't you spend some time with the plants and do some picking? The mice will be okay on their own.
I'm really worried about this family. The little baby looked really tiny. You didn't see it. It was like half the size that a tiny baby mouse should be. Okay, I'm just gonna leave some pumpkin seeds over here for them.
You do that, Maisie.
Bless.
Yeah.
Really, Bertha, though, I'm not sure. Like, I know you've been working really hard on these squashes, but the rosemary could use some attention, I believe.
Oh, have we got blight?
Well, they're looking a little dark. I don't know. That's what seems to be happening around my house sometimes when the goat is eating them and it gets a little colder. I've found that if you put a cloth over them, they'll stay warmer longer.
Couldn't hurt.
Is there tension there of like the younger witch telling the older witch how to tend to her garden, or is it congenial? Is it well received, or there's some bitterness in there?
I think let's lean into that with with that might work for Rosemary, but there are plenty of problems can't be mended by covering them up. That's something on your mind? You want to talk to Auntie Bertha about it?
I don't know what you mean. That seems to work perfectly fine with my rosemary. Maybe your rosemary is different.
When was the last time, April, that Bertha has fed her garden? Is it recently?
That was probably earlier in the season.
Okay.
But I'm leaning into I've been hearing some griping from your mother.
Well, that's no surprise. I mean, you know her.
I do. And I was wondering if you wanted to talk about it, or if you have plans what you're going to do about it.
My plans are to run away with the three of you and never return to this terrible village that wants me to get married to a stupid boy.
I'm a little old for running, Lindsay. I've put down roots and just trying to fertilize around here and make it better for the sprouts.
Well, can't you say that I'm like infertile or something? Maybe Sarah can tell them I'm infertile, and then they won't be interested in me as a wife, and then I can just be like some old maid in her garden like you, which I mean in the best of ways. It's the only thing I want to be, Bertha.
There's a cost to it, but I'll do my best by you.
You already have. This is my favorite place to come. This feels like my real home.
Just seeing her up.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Nice. Interesting dynamic. As that conversation was winding down, almost on cue, when Macy mentioned the pressure that she's getting from her parents to accept a suitor, a young gentleman comes walking up, attracted by the free winter squash. You see him, you recognize him as Jones Warren. He's a tall young man, red hair, shock curly red hair emerging from his head. You know him as a sensitive young boy, right? And so he approaches you, Maisie, and he's very shy, and he says, I noticed that you seem to like the woods as much as I do. You spend a lot of time there.
That's right, Jones, I do. I can't remember his name, I'm sorry. You just said
That's it, Jones.
Okay.
So I think it would be great if you just got it wrong.
Jim.
Oh, Jones, you hungry?
Not really. My stomach's feeling a little upset. I feel like I have dyspepsia, maybe. Is that a condition that has a name? I'm sort of in an overwrought mood. I've been out in the woods and I've been listening to the birds and the bees and seeing little squirrels run around on the ground, and all the activity and motion has sort of inspired me. It's inspired me. And
inspired you to do some gardening? I could use a hand.
No, you really couldn't, Bertha. I've got two hands right here.
All right.
I'm really good with my hands. I don't like holding tools and messing with tools. I like to keep my hands nice and soft. But all I'm trying to say, Macy, is I was out there, I was inspired, and I wrote you a little poem.
Oh, that's so great. You can leave it right there by the fence, and I will get it as soon as I'm done picking these squashes.
Over by...
Yeah, right there. Right, just right on the ground. That's right there is perfect. Yep.
What if the dirt smudges the words?
Dirt makes everything better.
We've got dirty hands. You don't want to hand it. Just leave it. Well,
a little dirt doesn't hurt anybody.
Okay, and so Jones withdraws very feebly into the background, right? And so that's your scene. You established a little relationship dynamic. A suitor, an ineffectual suitor has emerged. We'll see how where that goes. Who wants the next scene?
Wow, that was a lot.
That was delicious.
A lot to process. Sean, we can go together or individually. What do you think?
What I had been thinking before I thought we could do scenes together was a scene where I was caught by my neighbor plucking mushrooms.
Totally do that.
From their property. And I would be and I'm not married to that scene. I think it would set Sina up for being kind of in trouble and having some pressures to make recompense, possibly, I guess. But I'd be happy to have you in that, or happy to do a different scene with you, or happy to do independent scenes.
Well, I'm so excited about that scene that I'm canceling my ask, and I'm telling you that you definitely need to do that.
Okay, fantastic. So, Tim, I have an enemy named Gris Jones. He's a local farmer. I want to say he's our neighbor. His property adjoins ours. And also, I have an item on my gear called mushrooms, which I assume are of the hallucinogenic variety. And
That's a good assumption.
I think I get them from Gris's property. I think he doesn't know that they grow wild on his property. And so during the day, when I'm doing my normal duties and like washing clothes and things like that, I sneak off and get these mushrooms, and it has never been a problem up until now, when I'm collecting them in my apron. I have a little pocket, and hear him clear his throat or something like that. That's the frame of the scene that I had in mind, and I'm clearly on his property, which is a point of contention for Mr. Jones. He is very protective of his land.
Okay. Now I'm just going to apologize in advance, because Gris Jones is going to have a Southern accent, because it's my default accent whenever an accent must be produced, because I already have one.
You don't need an accent, but that's great. I'm not offended by your Southern accent.
Okay. You like turnips that much?
What? Who? What? Oh.
You digging in my turnips?
No turnips. I wouldn't. Hi, Mr. Jones.
That's all I grow, turnips.
Yeah, no, I would never take your turnips, Mr. Jones. I was just picking some of these useless old mushrooms off this tree. You want to look? They're nothing to see. They're just mangy things.
Do you make it a habit of going around picking through people's gardens like this?
Oh, am I on your land? I thought I was still on.
On William Fox's property? That son of a bitch.
You mean my master that I work for? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that son of a bitch. That's what he is.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with you.
What do you think of him? He treats you good? Is that what you having to run over here and dig turnips because he don't feed you? He don't pay you enough to eat?
I do have to provide my own mushrooms. It's true.
Mm-hmm. That's sorry.
You won't get me in trouble, will you? If you tell him that I've taken from you, I'm sure I'd be punished.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe you can do something for me. I won't tell him.
There's a subtle shift that perhaps Mr. Jones doesn't see, but the audience definitely sees as we watch Cinna sort of position herself to perhaps fight or flee at this point. Like she's kind of rolled up the mushrooms into her so that they won't like fly out, and she's maybe reaching slightly towards the knife that's underneath her apron. But it's all, I think it's imperceptible to him at this point, perhaps.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of things are probably imperceptible to Gris, so I would agree with you. I think this is probably imperceptible.
Right. The camera sees it though.
Okay, the camera sees it. He says, he keeps encroaching on my land.
Oh yeah. That's why I thought this was his land.
His horses get out, they come, and they dig up my ground.
Yeah.
Plant anything.
He does like his horses to have free reign. He says it makes them strong to run around and get grass from the wild.
Yeah, well, I think he has some funny notions.
Oh, do you? What kind of
Mhm.
funny notions you think he has?
I think he does. Like, he goes around, he wears them nice suits, he goes into church, he has his head held up real high. But there's just something not right about him. I know people. I can tell things about people. I'm a good judge of character. And that man is too big for his britches, is all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I wouldn't know anything about that, but
You ain't seen nothing funny over there? You ain't seen no evidence of funny notions when you working over there?
What kind of funny things would you imagine?
Well, I just don't think he's all he makes himself out to be. He acts like he's real pious.
Yeah.
Prays to your rising. He gives all this money to the church.
And what if he wasn't all that he said he was going to be? What would happen to him?
He'd be shamed, and he might be driven out, and his horses would quit getting in my farm and digging up my turnips when they're running around.
But for someone to be called out in the public square, they'd have to do
some pretty good evidence.
They'd have to do something really awful, and there'd have to be somebody. There'd have to be a powerful, respected man who would call them out.
Listen, I didn't want to say this in front of you because you seem like a nice young woman beside being a turnip thief, right?
Right.
But that one little detail. But I think he's a bit of a lech. I've seen women coming and going, is all I'm saying. I didn't want to say that out loud. But you sort of forced me into it. Well, I didn't say, yeah, you know.
I mean, if that was true, that would be very bad for him and for the family. And I certainly hope it isn't true, because I think see what that would do to Miss Millie Fox.
Break her heart.
I'm sure it would break her heart.
She's a kind woman. She don't deserve a husband like that.
No, she deserves an honest man, one who lives on the land, kind of grows turnips.
Yeah, somebody who works for a living.
Yeah, calluses on his hands, not nice, not fancy suits.
That's right. How you feeling over there? How you feeling, Sienna?
I mean, she went from like terrified that this man was gonna like do violence to her to like, whoa, maybe I could start a conspiracy against my master and get him like kicked out of town. And this sounds great. So I think she doesn't want to push it though. I don't think she wants to like stick around too long and get caught. So she says, well, I should go back because Mr. Fox, he has an awful temper. And if I'm too long, there'll be punishment. So I should go now, but gee, is it okay if I just take these worthless mushrooms? I promise there's no turnips in here.
It seems kind of funny to me, but yeah, that's fine with me.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
And, you know, we see like the hand that was sort of reaching for the knife is slid away, and she just rolls them up in the front of her dress and says, "You have a nice day now," and heads out.
Okay.
Cool.
Worthless mushrooms.
I mean, they were turnips.
Mushrooms, turnips.
They were not turnips. Okay. I figured I would like to be slightly dramatic, and nothing says introductions like attending a live birth. So let's get on it.
Nice.
I mean, what better way to find out all the town gossip when you're helping a baby come out, y'all?
Yeah.
So let's see. Sarah Biddet is often called upon to help, especially in particularly difficult births. And this one is the 7th child of Penny. Let's use Agatha. Agatha's a good name. of Agatha, a very, very, very devout sectarian member. And she really trusts Sarah, and she's super nervous. And she's been in labor for the past 12 hours, but everything kind of looks good with the exception of the fact that her husband is really, really, really focused on making sure that no matter what happens, the baby must be put after birth. So cut all of that. Yeah. So I think she's just making sure she's on her knees. Everything's looking great. The baby's looking awesome. There's some yelling and screaming, but she's speaking in really calm tones. This is going to be fine. This is going to be fine.
Jeanette, I missed a bit. What is it that the husband's concerned about the baby doing?
Oh, sorry about that. Super, super into making sure that the baby is prayed over right after birth.
Oh, okay. Prayed over. Got it. Good. Go.
Yeah. Very superstitious. So Sarah's just like very focused on making sure the baby is alive. And he's very focused on coming in every 5 minutes to make sure that nothing's happened yet.
Okay. How's this husband's demeanor? What kind of guy do you see him as?
I don't know. Surprise me.
Yeah. So he comes in. He's just been coming in and out, pacing obsessively. He's been getting increasingly concerned the longer that the labor has been going on. He comes back to you and he says, "You've been with us through many births. You've brought many of our children into the world. But you're responsible completely for whatever happens here. If this birth goes wrong, you've done something. He's very suspicious of midwives and midwifery in general. There's a sort of a common belief in the village that if something goes wrong with a birth, it's the midwife's fault. So he's seeing this protracted labor as evidence of something that you're doing wrong. You have an impure spirit, right? Or you're actively working against this birth for some reason. And he's become very uncomfortable that it's so outside of his control and he's so out of this equation. And he says to you, like, if this baby isn't delivered soon, I'm going to bring the village elders here and they're going to witness what transpires. I want witnesses for what transpires. So he's starting to think that this is going to be some sort of fell birth or a birth under an ill star, right? And he's just putting pressure on you for the delivery to go okay.
Sarah is generally very, very accommodating and kind of cajoling, but I have a feeling that she's been up for quite some time. So she looks up at him and she kind of wipes off her hands and she looks at his wife and says, just deep breaths, and puts her hands on her hips and says, "This is your 7th child, and your wife is in incredible pain. And the more you distract me, because you continue to talk when this is a sacred space that's supposed to be filled with love and God's light, you're only making it worse for yourself." And she kind of just looks at him like a teacher would look at someone and go, just kneels back down and rolls up her sleeves. It's woman's work. and you have no place here. She kind of shoos him out, and I feel like she's done this a couple times.
Right.
But
yeah.
get up.
Just go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think she is kind of, she's mildly concerned because births are always pretty hard.
Mm-hmm. How do you want this birth to go? Is this something that maybe we should do a fortune roll for?
Sure. I think whatever causes some use for us later, or something that can be useful for all of us in a great way, I'm totally down with. So if you want to do a fortune roll, we can.
Yeah. Can we say that this is like now that the game is taking place also at a full moon? That there's a full moon happening at this birth as well, or there will be one tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Do we like it?
Full moon, so he's feeling like a little more superstitious because of this, and he's been worried about it. He's been trying to suppress these anxieties, and now it's just sort of bubbling up, and he's turning his anxiety onto the midwife, right? And assigning all the burden of this birth is hers now. Sean, what I'm using Roll20 for just sort of blinked out. Would you mind doing a fortune roll?
Oh,
maybe
sure.
We can look at Sarah's. What would you want to use, Sarah, as sort of your base skill here?
Wow, this is interesting. I guess for a fortune roll, maybe study would be useful because that's an insight.
You could use finesse, advanced midwifery techniques as finesse roll. I think that might be a possibility.
Okay.
Consorting, just like, sort of like guiding Agatha through the process, keeping her morale up, sort of this.
Oh, yeah. That sounds pretty solid. Okay. So
that would be 2 die. I think because you've done this many times before and you have a lot of experience, I think that's another one in your favor. And because you're a witch and it's a full moon and I don't want something tragic to happen, let's say it's a 4 die fortune roll. And
yeah,
let's see.
That sounds good to me. And
all right.
You want to roll it, Janaea?
I'm rolling it. Let's.
All right.
Wow. That was a tragic roll.
Hey, all those ones don't matter. The only one that matters is the 5.
The 5's the only thing that matters. So, right. So in the dice pool, a 6 would be a complete success. A 5, it's still a success. There's just a consequence, right? And that consequence can be narrative. That consequence can be mechanical. It can be a range of things. But a fortune roll is just sort of does something happen or does it not, right? It's not quite the same as an action roll. So you deliver this baby, right? This baby is healthy. Is it a boy or a girl?
You'll have to wait till it grows up and tells you.
Yeah, it's like it's a healthy baby.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
In terms of, it's a healthy baby. We'll see what it is one day when it grows up.
Yes.
However, there's one little thing that's not quite expected. It causes you some concern. There's an odd birthmark, right? Just on the inside of its ankle. It's sort of shaped like, it's shaped like a dagger. It's a birthmark shaped like a dagger on the inside of its ankle. And you're a little concerned what will happen to this baby if certain others see this mark, because this is a superstitious community, right? Highly superstitious. So what do you want to do?
How pronounced is this mark? Like when you hold the baby immediately, do you look at the baby and go, that's a dagger. Or can we?
It's a small, subtle dagger, right? Could be
Okay.
mistaken for like a little shadow near the ankle, but if you were looking closely, you can see it.
But if you were a superstitious person inspecting your baby for devil's marks, you may notice there's a dagger, eh?
You may notice the dagger.
If you were say to pray over your child and inspect them, yeah.
All right. Well, in the hopes that the baby is just going to grow up to be a witch, a magic user, Sarah kind of realizes that this child and her, therefore, can be implicated if anything were to go awry. And as such, she's going to do a little bit of an act while cleaning up the baby. She's visibly struck. She looks visibly struck and completely beatific in her own way, which is complete acting on her part. Complete acting, but very useful. I feel as if there is a light, a holy and beatific light, a seventh child, very, very lucky and filled with the Lord's good graces. I feel as if this child has been touched by God. This house is so humble and you've worked so hard. I'm sure that I just truly feel this. And she kind of hands it over for the mother and kind of hopes that any later mark found on the child will be because she's having like a particularly religious experience on her own, which is just beautiful weeping and just general like tears and praises, which she knows how to do since her husband is the secondary preacher.
Yeah, I think that sounds great.
Just full on get in there.
Yeah, I think to see what sort of long-term effect this has on this couple and their perception of the child as it grows up, you can do an action roll this time, and you can choose again whatever you want, sway, consort, to see how powerful this performance is. And I think because of they're just happy that the baby is healthy, I think you'll be in a sort of a controlled position, and that it would have standard effect. It would sort of like defray their attention from
Okay.
Right.
I think I am going to use sway. Okay. That sounds like a good one. So that's 2d6. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And you can push yourself and take 2 stress to add another die to the pool if you want some more ammunition. And you have to get 10 stress before you pick up a trauma. So pretty mild stress cost.
I mean, like, why not? Let's do it. Okay. So that's 3d6, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's a far better roll there.
Nice. Look at that. That third die was the one.
I'm really feeling myself and the baby.
She takes it. She seems overjoyed. She thanks you. The husband comes in. He doesn't quite apologize, but his focus is totally off you. He's forgotten the little tantrum that he had in the aspersions that he was casting. Right. Yeah. So you delivered a child. Full moon, excited. Who may be a future witch, you know. They may be a
7th kid, why not? Dagger shaped, see you soon.
Right. 7th kid, dagger shaped, almost has to be, right? So those are the village scenes. That's how every session starts, you know, and over time the narratives start to pile up and interweave with each other a little bit. And then there's the idea that, you know, day moves into dusk and you all come together in your hovel in the basement beneath Bertha's house, right?
Mhm.
And you sort of discuss what you've learned, and several things can happen at this point. And actually, after village play, the GM has the option to introduce like a twist or a new event. And sometimes I'll do that if like an adventure hook for that night isn't just screaming out from the interactions that happen. I'll come in and say, well, all this happened and then this happened too, right? And so I think I might go ahead and uh, throw in one of those twists.
Ooh.
But
I mean,
this is
I have definitely plans to implicate my Mr. William Fox as being unfaithful to his wife and therefore cast out of polite society. So I definitely have an idea. I don't know that other people would care about it because he's not really tied to them, but
I'll
well, that's
back you
something I
up.
can talk about now, and I can hold that hook.
yeah, I'm not sure. He hasn't really entered into anyone else's life, so it may not be as exciting as something that all four of us were sort of affected by. But
Yeah.
why don't you give the hook, and I can angle for that if it feels like an interesting character choice to sort of go against, to complicate things further.
Right. So this hook is sort of a non-subtle hook, and normally first session it would be a more subtle hook. But it's 2.5 hours, so here's a big hook if y'all want to take up this hook. Toward the end of the day, Proper Greaves, who's the big sectarian minister in town, sort of called a town meeting and announced that my cats are fussing with each other. He announced that the way he was received at the last town council meeting was very upsetting to him. He had petitioned for a number of changes to the laws in Earlham. He had floated the idea of mandatory church attendance, whether it was a sectarian church or a friend church. He had floated the idea of there being a limit on the number of ales one could consume at the local tavern, right? And these were just sort of met with indifference and a little bit of ridicule and mocking. It just seemed like sort of grandstanding on his part. But he took this as a great offense, or at least pretended to take it as a great offense. And he associated with it a larger sort of like cultural rot that has infested Earlham. And he brought up all these different examples of things that he's seen people in town doing, like drunken laughter far into the night, poor church attendance, blah, 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 right? And so he's been grousing about these things. And late in the afternoon, he announces at this sort of town meeting that he's called together that he has hired Ignatius Reed, who is one of the most famous witch finders on the Cape, right? Who has a history of witch finding in Old Durst. He established his name in the old country, right? And now he's come to the Cape, being paid by the sectarian church to find as many witches as he can, right? And he gets paid per witch, right? So it's, it behooves him to find witches, right? And so he introduces Ignatius Reed, who is this older man, around 70 years old, sort of a hawk-like face, hawk-like eyes, the craggy forehead, and his two assistants, who are also like quite odd. So there's Ignatius Reed, and then this figure named Pablum, who's, I don't know, what's the best way to describe his head? It's sort of, he's bald, and it looks sort of like a shiny phosphorescent egg, right? And he has these sort of blank gray eyes, and his flesh just seems like sweaty and super sort of pallid, and he's in this cloak. And so you have this older witch hunter, this monkish type figure, and then they have a little boy with them too, who is their other assistant, right? And Ignatius claims that the little boy can smell witches, that this is a gift that Urizen has given him, and he uses him to sort of scout out and find potential leads because he can actually smell witches, right? So this whole pony and dog show is going on. A witch finder has come to the village. He will be sort of like mixing in with the locals, questioning people, seeing if there's any untoward behavior, right? And then the pressure is on him to at least find a few, right? So this has happened. A witch finder is in the village. So that can come into the equation. You could deal with that problem tonight. It might be a bigger problem than you want to engage at this point. You might want to see what he does over the next couple of days. But that's just a big, obvious potential adventure hook if these other subtle ones that, you know. So yeah, so y'all come together and y'all can discuss what y'all want to do for the subversion tonight.
Why don't we take our break right now before we start our subversion? So we'll be gone. We'll be off for a couple minutes, and then when we come back, we can do the subversion. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Awesome. So see everybody in a few.